The morning sky over Geneva should have been blue, but Dr. Marcus Webb hadn't seen true blue in 3 years. The atmosphere hung thick with particulate haze, a sickly amber that turned every sunrise into a funeral. He stood on the observation deck of the United Earth Environmental Center, watching readouts that all screamed the same message. Time was running out. Ocean acidification up another 0.2%, said his assistant, Jerome Castillo, his voice hollow. That's the 4th spike this month. Marcus closed his eyes. The cascading failures had accelerated beyond every model's worst prediction. The Atlantic current had stalled completely. Plankton populations were collapsing. The Amazon basin was now a dust bowl. And yesterday, Beijing had evacuated its final 3 million residents as groundwater supplies turned toxic. Humanity had reached its limit, not through war or plague, but through the slow, grinding consequences of its own industrial adolescence. They're here, Jerome said quietly. Through the haze, a ship descended, not human, but elegant and vast, its hull shimmering with technology that made Earth's best engineering look like stone tools. The Galactic Council had finally answered humanity's desperate plea for help. Marcus felt his stomach tighten with a mixture of hope and humiliation. The delegation arrived within the hour. Council Representative Kuralf stood nearly 8 feet tall, his crystalline skin refracting light in patterns that seemed deliberately hypnotic. Behind him, 3 attendants carried devices that hummed with barely contained power terraforming technology that could restore Earth's biosphere in a matter of years. Dr. Webb, Kuralf's voice resonated like wind chimes made of glass. We have reviewed your species request. The Council is sympathetic to your predicament. Thank you, Marcus said, hating how small his voice sounded. We're prepared to meet any reasonable terms. Reasonable. Kurala repeated the word as if tasting something bitter. Let us be clear about what has brought you to this moment. Your species consumed without wisdom. You multiplied without restraint. You poisoned your own nest through short-sightedness that the Council finds instructive. Marcus felt heat rise in his chest, but bit it back. Earth had no leverage here. The Council has maintained galactic peace for 47,000 years, Kuralf continued, circling the room like a professor addressing students. We have done so because we learned what you are only now discovering, that civilizations must be guided by those who have already transcended such primitive mistakes. The younger species always struggle. The younger species always fail. This is why the Council exists. We understand we have much to learn, Marcus said carefully. Indeed, the terms are simple. We will provide the terraforming technology. We will share the atmospheric processors. We will teach you the biological restoration techniques. Kuralf paused, his luminous eyes fixed on Marcus. But in exchange, humanity must accept its place. You will acknowledge Council guidance in all expansion decisions. You will accept that your judgment has proven insufficient. You will learn humility. Jerome shifted beside Marcus, jaw clenched. Around the room, the human delegation sat in chairs that suddenly felt too small, too low. The alternative, Kuralf said softly, is that we leave, and your planet dies within a generation. Perhaps two, if you ration carefully. The words hung in the amber air. Marcus looked at the data screens showing real-time environmental collapse. He thought of his daughter, only 6 years old, who would never see a real forest if the Council left today. He thought of the billions depending on this moment. We accept, Marcus said, the words tasting like ash. We'll sign whatever protocols you require. Kuralf smiled, an expression that seemed rehearsed for maximum condescension. A wise choice. We will begin preparations immediately. Your people will learn what it means to be properly guided. As the Council delegation departed, Marcus stood alone at the window. The terraforming equipment was already being unloaded, each piece a marvel that humanity couldn't have developed for centuries. Relief warred with something else in his chest, a nagging discomfort he couldn't quite name. Something about this feels wrong, Jerome whispered beside him. Marcus nodded slowly. The Council's benevolence felt too practiced, too smooth, like a performance repeated countless times. But what choice did they have? Earth was dying, and only the Council could save it. He pulled up the data transfer protocols. The Council had provided thousands of pages of technical specifications. historical records, and implementation guidelines. Somewhere in all that information, humanity would learn to heal their world. Marcus just hoped the price of that knowledge wouldn't cost them something even more precious than their planet. Yuki Tanaka had always loved patterns. As a junior data analyst at the Earth Restoration Project, she spent her days cross-referencing Council terraforming protocols with Earth's biological systems, searching for optimal implementation sequences. It was meticulous work that most people found mind-numbing, but Yuki saw it as solving an elegant puzzle where every piece mattered. 3 weeks into the Council's aid program, she noticed something odd. Dr. Webb. She appeared at Marcus's office door, tablet clutched against her chest. "Do you have a minute?" Marcus looked up from his own ocean of data, exhaustion etched into the lines round his eyes. "What is it, Yuki?" "The atmospheric processors the Council gave us. I was running compatibility checks with our satellite network when I found something strange in the metadata." She pulled up a holographic display. "See these timestamp markers? They're embedded in the equipment's core programming." Marcus leaned forward. "And they don't match the Council's stated timeline. According to Kralth, the Valkyrie species developed terraforming technology 12,000 years ago, right? But these timestamps reference correction protocols from only 8,000 years ago. And there are deleted file references, lots of them. Could be measurement differences," Marcus suggested, though his tone said he didn't believe it. "Different calendar systems, that's what I thought too. But then I started looking at the historical records the Council provided for the other technologies." Yuki's fingers danced across the display, pulling up document after document. Every single Council species claims they achieved environmental mastery early in their development. The Thorians supposedly never had resource wars. The Quilleth never experienced population collapse. The Zinthers never polluted their oceans. They're advanced species, Yuki. Maybe they really were that wise, but that's just it. Nobody's that wise. Evolution doesn't work that way. Intelligence emerges through trial and error, through mistakes and corrections. She pulled up another file. "So I started digging into the encrypted sections of the data they gave us. The parts they said were just legacy code fragments we could ignore." Marcus stood up, suddenly alert. "You cracked Council encryption?" "Not exactly cracked. More like found where someone had already opened it and forgotten to close it completely." A slight smile crossed her face. "Turns out the Council's security isn't as perfect as their history." She opened the recovered files. Marcus felt his breath catch. The first document showed atmospheric readings from the Valkyrie homeworld. Not from 12,000 years ago, but from 9,000 years ago. The data revealed pollution levels that made Earth's crisis look manageable. Oceans with pH levels incompatible with life. An atmosphere so toxic that the entire species had been forced underground for 3 generations. "Keep going," Marcus whispered. I pulled up more files, each one more damning than the last. The Thorian extinction wave, a resource war that had killed 4 billion members of their species and rendered the continents uninhabitable for centuries. The Quilleth population collapse, a famine so severe they'd resorted to eating their own dead. The Zinther great poisoning, industrial contamination that had wiped out 90% of their marine ecosystems. Every single Council species went through the same crisis we're facing. Yuki said quietly, "Some of them had it worse, much worse, but they've systematically erased these histories from their official records." Marcus scrolled through document after document, his mind reeling. Here was a Valkyrie internal memo discussing how to reframe the narrative of our difficult adolescence. There was a Thorian government decree ordering the destruction of all records from their period of shame, a Quilleth academic paper, arguing that younger species will respect guidance more if they believe we achieved wisdom. "Naturally, they've been lying," Marcus said, his voice barely audible. "The entire Council built their authority on manufactured moral superiority. There's more." Yuki pulled up a recent file, dated just 2 months before Earth's request for aid. It was a Council internal discussion about humanity's environmental crisis. Marcus read it once, then twice, unable to process the casual cruelty of the words. Another predictable failure. The human pattern mirrors our own historical mistakes with remarkable precision. We should leverage their desperation to reinforce Council authority structure. Their gratitude will ensure compliance for generations. They knew, Marcus said, feeling anger kindle in his chest. They knew we were going through exactly what they went through. And instead of treating us as equals facing a universal challenge, they chose to humiliate us, to make us grovel. Jerome appeared at the door, drawn by their raised voices. What's going on? Marcus turned to him, something hardening in his expression. Get me Ambassador Okonkwo, and open a channel to every human colony and research station in Council space. Then get me communication access to the Galactic Assembly. Marcus, what are you doing? Yuki asked, though her eyes showed she already knew what we should have done from the beginning. Telling the truth, he looked back at the files, at the carefully constructed lies of species who claimed enlightenment. The Council built their entire authority on the idea that they're naturally superior to younger species, that they never made our mistakes. But it's all fiction. They're just older, not wiser. And it's time the galaxy knew it. They'll deny it, Jerome said. They'll say the files are fabricated. Maybe, but we'll present the evidence anyway. Every encrypted file, every deleted document, every piece of their hidden history. Marcus felt a strange calm settling over him. We came to them humble and desperate, willing to accept any terms. But we won't accept terms based on lies. Yuki nodded slowly. When do we go public? Tomorrow, at the Galactic Assembly. Kuralth is supposed to present humanity as a cautionary tale to the other younger species, an example of what happens without Council guidance. Marcus smiled, but there was no humor in it. Instead, we're going to tell a different story, about what happens when truth meets manufactured perfection. He looked out at the amber sky, at Earth still struggling in its crisis. They still needed the Council's help, still needed the technology to survive, but they would accept it as equals, not as children being scolded by parents who'd conveniently forgotten their own troubled youth. The galaxy had lived under the Council's carefully crafted mythology for thousands of years. Tomorrow, that mythology would crumble, and Marcus had no idea what would rise in its place, but anything was better than a lie. The Galactic Assembly chamber was designed to inspire awe, a vast spherical arena floating in orbit above the Council's capital world. Its transparent walls offered a view of the cosmos itself, a reminder that the decisions made here affected countless stars. Representatives from 200 species filled the tiered seating, their forms ranging from crystalline to gaseous to something that looked like living mathematics. Marcus Webb stood at the central platform, feeling impossibly small. Beside him, Ambassador Priya Okonkwo adjusted her formal robes, her dark eyes scanning the assembly with practiced diplomacy. Behind them, Yuki worked quietly at a console, preparing the data that would change everything. Kuralth rose from the Council's elevated, his crystalline form catching the starlight. Honored Assembly, we gather today to discuss the human integration protocols. As you know, humanity recently petitioned the Council for environmental assistance after devastating their homeworld through short-sighted industrialization. His voice carried perfectly through the chamber. Their crisis serves as a valuable lesson for all younger species about the consequences of development without wisdom. Murmurs rippled through the assembly. Marcus saw representatives from other young species, the Drex, barely 500 years spacefaring, the Mirati, still establishing their first colony worlds, watching with expressions ranging from pity to contempt. This was the Council's standard narrative. Younger species fail, older species guide. The hierarchy remains stable, however. Kuralth continued. The Council in its benevolence has agreed to share our terraforming knowledge. We will help humanity recover, teaching them the enlightened approach that we ourselves have always. That's a lie, Marcus said quietly. The chamber fell silent. Every translator device in the room flickered, as if unsure they'd heard correctly. Kuralth's luminous eyes fixed on Marcus. Excuse me, you didn't always have an enlightened approach, Marcus said, his voice steady now. None of you did, and you know it. Dr. Webb, Kuralth's tone carried a warning. You are a guest in this assembly. Your species has been granted audience as a courtesy. Show them, Yuki. The holographic displays erupted with data. Thousands of files materialized in the space above the assembly floor. Documents, recordings, atmospheric readings, historical records, all Council data, all encrypted, All now exposed. 9,000 years ago, Marcus began, his voice amplified through the chamber. The Valkyrie homeworld was dying. Atmospheric toxicity at 700 parts per million. Ocean acidification at pH 6.2. Industrial contamination in 98% of freshwater sources. He pulled up the readings. Worse than Earth, significantly worse. Kuralth remained frozen, his crystalline skin suddenly dim. The Thorian resource wars killed 4 billion of your people. Marcus continued, turning to the Thorian representative, whose 6 eyes had gone wide. The Quileth Great Famine led to societal collapse. The Zinther pollution event wiped out your entire marine ecosystem. File after file appeared, each one showing catastrophic failures identical to or exceeding Earth's current crisis. These are fabrications, Kuralth finally managed. Desperate lies from a species trying to avoid accountability. They're your own records. Yuki interrupted, her voice cutting through his. Encrypted and hidden, yes, but still stored in the data you gave us. You didn't even delete them properly. You just rewrote the public versions and hoped no one would look deeper. A younger representative from the Drex Confederation stood abruptly. Is this true? Did all the Council species experience these failures? Of course not, Kuralth said, but his voice had lost its certainty. These files are clearly corrupted data from your own planetary archives, Marcus said, complete with authentication codes, timestamp verification, and geological correlation data. Yuki, show them the memo. The Valkyrie internal document appeared. Massive and undeniable. Younger species will respect guidance more. If they believe we achieved wisdom naturally, recommend systematic historical revision across all Council records. The assembly exploded into chaos. Representatives shouted questions. The younger species delegates gathered in urgent clusters. Even some of the older Council species looked shocked, as if they'd never seen these files themselves, as if the lie had been maintained for so many generations that even they'd forgotten the truth. You built your entire authority on manufactured superiority, Prio Conquo said, her diplomat's voice somehow cutting through the noise. You took your real struggles, your actual growth, your genuine wisdom earned through failure, and you erased it. You pretended you were naturally enlightened, that younger species were fundamentally inferior. But the truth is simpler and more beautiful. You were exactly like us. You made the same mistakes. You faced the same crises. You struggled and survived and learned. That's not shameful. That's universal. And you stole it from us, Marcus added, feeling the weight of revelation settle over the chamber. You stole the chance for younger species to see themselves in you, to know that growth is messy and painful for everyone, to understand that making mistakes doesn't make us inferior, it makes us normal. Kuralth finally descended from the Council platform, his movements stiff. Even if these records are authentic, they are ancient history. The Council's current wisdom is what matters. The structure we've built is built on lies, a new voice interrupted. A Thorian elder, one of the oldest Council members, had risen. Her scaled form trembled slightly. I remember the stories my grandmother told me. Stories her grandmother told her, about the burning skies and poisoned wells. I thought they were myths, cautionary tales, but they were real, weren't they? We really did nearly destroy ourselves. Silence fell again, but this time it felt different. Heavier, more honest. We were ashamed, the Thorian elder continued. So ashamed that we erased it. We told ourselves we were protecting our dignity, maintaining respect. But really, we were just afraid. Afraid that if younger species knew the truth, they wouldn't need us anymore. Marcus felt something shift in the chamber. Not anger now, but something more fragile. Understanding, perhaps, or the beginning of it. A Mirati representative spoke up, her voice young and uncertain. When we requested Council guidance on our resource distribution problems, you told us we were making mistakes no enlightened species would make. You made us feel primitive, broken, but you're not, Marcus said gently. You're just young, like we are, like they were. This isn't about perfection. It's about growth. Priya stepped forward, her diplomatic instincts taking over. The Council does have valuable knowledge, thousands of years of experience that younger species need. But that exchange has to be based on truth, not manufactured hierarchy. You don't need to be perfect to teach us. You just need to be honest about how you learned. Over the next hours, the assembly transformed. Council representatives began sharing their own suppressed histories, some reluctantly, others with what looked like relief. The Zinther delegate produced files about their pollution crisis that even the council hadn't known existed. A Quilleth historian admitted her entire career had been devoted to contextualizing their species' darkest period into something more palatable. And the younger species listened, not with contempt, but with recognition, with hope. By the time Earth's star set beyond the chamber's transparent walls, a new framework had begun to emerge, not a rejection of the council's knowledge, but a restructuring of how it was shared. The Galactic Accord, they called it, a system built on transparency, where every species shared both their achievements and their failures, where wisdom came not from claiming perfection, but from honest reflection on growth. Earth will still need help, Marcus said during the final session. We're still dying. That hasn't changed. But the terms have, Krauth replied quietly. His crystalline form had regained some of its luminosity, but his voice carried a new quality, something that might have been humility. We will share our technology, our knowledge, our experience, not as superior beings guiding primitives, but as older siblings who remember what growing pains feel like. If you'll accept that, we will, Priya said. And in exchange, we'll share something the council seems to have forgotten how to do. What's that? Admit when we're wrong, openly, honestly, without shame, she smiled. Because that's not weakness. That's how you grow. 6 months later, Marcus stood in the same spot in Geneva where he'd first watched the council ship arrive. But the sky was different now. Still amber, still damaged, but filled with activity. Council ships worked alongside human vessels, implementing terraforming protocols, but also learning from human innovation, scrappy, improvised solutions born from desperation that sometimes worked better than ancient established methods. Yuki appeared beside him, carrying 2 cups of actual coffee, a luxury as council agricultural technology helped restore Earth's farmlands. The Drex just published their complete environmental history, everything, every mistake, every failure, every lesson learned. Good, Marcus said. That's good. The Mirati are doing the same. Even some of the older council species are starting to open their archives. She took a sip of coffee. You know what's funny? Once everyone started being honest about their problems, solutions started appearing faster. Turns out when you're not pretending to be perfect, you can actually collaborate. Marcus nodded, watching the terraforming arrays slowly, incrementally, begin to heal his world. It would take years still, decades, but now they faced it not as failures begging for salvation, but as one more species in a galaxy full of imperfect beings, all trying to grow. Earth had reached its limit, and in its desperation, had accidentally shattered a lie that had governed the stars for millennia, not through strength or superiority, but through the simple, revolutionary act of admitting weakness without shame. The galaxy would never be the same. And as the first clear blue sky in for years began to peek through the amber haze, Marcus thought that maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what everyone needed. Growth isn't about never falling. It's about being honest enough to ask for help getting back up, and wise enough to remember that fall when someone else needs a hand. That was the real lesson, not from the council's manufactured perfection, but from humanity's messy, painful, beautiful truth. And now, finally, the whole galaxy could learn it together.